Hello, Kansas. This is Scott Meyers. I have the honor of serving as the Director of Teacher Licensure and Accreditation here at the Kansas State Department of Education. And I'm sitting in today for my direct supervisor, Brad Newenswander, the Deputy Commissioner of the Division of Learning Services for the KSDE, to introduce and welcome you to this week's DLS Lunchtime Hot Topics event. It is November 2nd, 2016. On this particular Hot Topics session, we will be covering KISA, ESSA, and the Kansas Volunteer Commission. During the portion of KISA, you'll hear from me, Scott Meyers, talking about the second quarter rollout information for KISA. As you're well aware, our new accreditation system launches next school year, and so we are chunking out the information to you quarterly. So today's topic deals with the second quarter rollout information. Also, Dean will be here with you today to talk with you about ESSA, and specifically within ESSA, the evidence-based interventions and systemic improvement that will become more manifest by following the concepts of ESSA. And thirdly, our third topic of today comes from Jessica Noble, Assistant Director on the Teacher Licensure and Accreditation team. She also serves as the Executive Director of the Kansas Volunteer Commission, or KISA, and she is launching or talking with you today about the request for applications for AmeriCorps. So, as always, if you have any questions, follow up to the information shared with you, please email your questions to the link on the screen, lunchtime@ksde.org. Then we will get answers back out to you individually and also the listservs. So with that, sit back and enjoy November 2nd, 2016, Hot Topics information from the KSDE. Thank you.
Hi, this is Jessica Noble with the Kansas Volunteer Commission. I wanted to tell you about a couple of requests for applications that we currently have available that might interest many of you in the education field. We are currently accepting applications for our AmeriCorps Kansas programs, as well as our Volunteer Generation Fund. A little bit about each. The AmeriCorps Kansas programs are grant funds that help us to expand existing services that you may already have in your community, or to develop something new, a new program that hasn't been developed before to address community needs. In 16-17, we were able to award 8 grants that ranged from $60,000 to $435,000. So there's a lot of variation in the grant funding that's available through this program. It is a match program, which means that you would have to match it with other non-federal funds at the particular percentage level that you would come in at. I believe for first-time programs, it's around 24%. Once you've been in it for a considerable amount of time, it does max out at 50%. The other thing that I'll tell you is it is a cost reimbursement grant. So you do have to have funds available to initiate the program, and then you would receive a reimbursement from the Volunteer Commission each month. The following entities can apply for this program. Of course, this Hot Topics is specifically for our K-12 districts. So please know that you can apply for this. We currently do have one district in the state, USD 500, the KCK Public Schools. They have an AmeriCorps program that helps with tutoring and of their students in their after-school and at-risk programming. These are the priority areas that have been identified by the Corporation for National and Community Service. In Kansas, our priority area is economic opportunity, education, as well as the multi-focus intermediary with a rural emphasis. Any of these priority areas, and even programs that are outside of these priority areas, may apply, but these are the ones that will receive the highest priority. The multi-focus intermediary is specifically designed for smaller organizations who couldn't support an AmeriCorps program on their own. They can come together with other programs, with one of them acting as a hub, so that they would all be able to participate in the AmeriCorps program, but to have one central organization who's responsible for the grant reporting and the oversight. When you encounter those types of intermediaries, it's often that each of the individual organizations has a different need, so a different focus area or priority area that they want to have. And so that's why we call it a multi-focus intermediary. And we've also added that a particular emphasis area for us is the rural part of the state. So if you're in a rural part of the state and you're interested in looking at this intermediary idea, we do encourage you to contact us. One idea that I had was, for instance, if you partnered together with a number of districts who were close to you in proximity, along with a service center, the service center might be able to act as the intermediary hub while putting members into your schools to help with things like after-school programs, to help with graduation coaching, to help with tutoring, to help with mentoring. So there's a lot of support that you could get from the members while sharing them also with other districts. So that might be something that you want to think about. The AmeriCorps program notice of intent is December 15th. The preliminary application is due December 30th. We'll then go through a process of review with a little bit of initial clarification. The final application will be due February 10th. And this is a rather large application. So for those of you who are listening and thinking about this for the first time ever, you're probably not going to be in a place where you will apply this year, unless you wanted to apply with a particular focus, so maybe on a planning grant. However, all of you, I think, are well suited for the Volunteer Generation Fund, and we're specifically focusing this year on a STEM mentoring initiative. We have actually had this same initiative for 2 years in a row. This will be the 3rd year, and it will probably be our final year as well. So you might keep that in mind as you're thinking about initiating this grant, that it will be a one year of funding, but it might be just what you need to kick off a STEM mentoring initiative in your school. So the funds are to strengthen the capacity of mentoring organizations to increase the number of mentors serving our students in the science, technology, engineering, and math areas. We do have $20,000 grants that are available. There will be 5 of them, and you will, just like the AmeriCorps, be required to match. Although for this particular grant, you match at 50%, so you would also need to be able to match $20,000. And it would also be a cost reimbursement grant. All of the same entities from the AmeriCorps program can apply. That includes our K-12 districts. We do have a couple of districts who are currently implementing this program. Olathe has a STEM mentoring initiative, as well as Basehor-Linwood. The application deadline for this is much shorter because the application itself is much shorter. So applications are due by November 16th with a little bit of clarification that will take place and a final notification on December 16th. We encourage you to check out our website, www.canserve.org. Both of these notice of funding opportunities are available on the homepage on the right-hand side. If you have questions or you want to talk about whether or not this opportunity might be right for your school or district, I encourage you to contact me. You have my information there. Thank you very much.
Hello, this is Dean Zajic, and I'm the State and Federal Fiscal Coordinator here at the Kansas State Department of Education. And I'm here to give you this week's update on the Elementary and Secondary Education Act and the implementation of the Every Student Succeeds Act. Today's discussion is going to be about evidence-based intervention and systems improvement. As many of you know, evidence-based interventions is an old concept that's existed for a long time, but whereas before it was a best practice under the ESCA and No Child Left Behind, it is now, and it's actually now a defined requirement under ESSA, effective in the 2017-18 and beyond school year. And this is important for all of us because whereas before this was just a best practice, it is now a requirement that all of your interventions that are supplied out of whether they're Title II teacher improvement, Title I school improvement, Title III, whatever, that all of those interventions be evidence-based and be supported by a system of systemic improvement. So what does that mean? Evidence-based intervention, as defined now in the ESEA, updated ESEA, is a system or an intervention that demonstrates a statistically significant effect on improving student outcomes or other relevant outcomes based on either strong evidence, moderate evidence, promising evidence, or demonstrates a rationale based on high-quality research findings or positive evaluation that such activity or intervention is likely to improve student outcomes or other relevant outcomes, and it includes an ongoing effort to examine the effects of such activity. So what does all that mean? First of all, strong evidence. Strong evidence is now defined under ESSA as an intervention that shows a statistically significant and positive effect of the intervention on a student's outcome or other relevant outcome. And I won't read the entire definition here because you can go back and look at it. But the important thing is that as you are choosing services and intervention models for your kiddos, you are considering whether or not they are in fact supported by existing systems of evidence or a body of research that we'll talk about. And when we say that they're supported by strong evidence, where does that we need to consider where that evidence is coming from? Who's doing the evaluation? I was at a conference just a couple of weeks ago with a number of districts talking to them, and one of them made a great point that your vendor for a product is probably not your best source for an unbiased evaluation for the product. Instead, we want to look at existing research that's done by universities or other outside third-party entities, including the What Works Clearinghouse, WWC, which there will be a link to at the end of this presentation. Moderate evidence, here again, just a little bit different from the strong evidence, and I'm not going to read it all, but you can go back and actually read this, or you can read the full explanation in the non-regulatory guidance for Title II that was released on September 27th. There again, a link to that material is included at the end of this presentation. Promising evidence, and finally demonstrates a rationale. And I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about this one. So the prior three we're talking about addressed evidence, i.e. research that's already been done to evaluate the effectiveness of a particular intervention. But as we know, some of the newest interventions and opportunities to improve outcomes for children may be something that is not yet tested. And so in those cases, what we want to look at is an intervention that is at least informed on rationale that is informed by research or an evaluation that suggests how the intervention is likely to improve the relevant outcomes, and this is key, an effort to study the effects of the intervention is included that will, as part of the intervention or that is being conducted elsewhere, evaluates the intervention to see if it's doing what it's supposed to do. Because in all of this, there needs to be a cyclical framework for maximizing the results. Whether you're using something that is evidence-based or that is still at the evidence-based rationale phase, you need to have a cyclical framework in order to evaluate and continue to examine the results of the intervention within your district or within your building. The particular intervention it must be identified to align with your local needs, i.e. based on your local needs assessment, whether that's at the district level or at the building level, that whatever that intervention is that you have the capacity, the local capacity to implement it. It may be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if you don't have the staff and the resources to implement it, it will not be successful. That there is a robust implementation plan, and that there are adequate resources to provide for the implementation. And finally, that information needs to be gathered regularly to examine the strategy and reflect and inform next steps. So what does that last point mean? That means that it's not enough to choose your intervention and implement it. You need to also have a system by which you are gathering information and evaluating that information throughout the implementation of the strategy to verify that it is in fact having the impact that it is designed to have. And a prime example of this is a research paper that was released just in the last few months, in which that evaluated a particular program this was in another state, but it was an examination of a particular program to reduce teenage births, in which a series of districts implemented a program that I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, where you have the egg that you take care of like a baby. Well, it was a particular doll that was created to mimic a human baby, and the idea of this multi-year study was to evaluate whether or not the program actually reduced the number of teenage births for the kids that participated in that program. And through that systemic study, what they found was that, in fact, not only did it not reduce the number of teenage births, there was actually a negative impact by this program. The program actually, for the kiddos that participated in the program, they actually had an increase, a statistic increase in the number of teenage births as compared to the control group. So this is why it is important that we actually measure our strategies to make sure that they are working, and so that we can go back and adjust, examine, and tweak if possible, or look at a different intervention. The cyclical framework for improvement, this is just kind of a graphical analysis of what we just talked about. But here again, I want to point out that center circle, that as you go through the identify local needs, select the approach, come up with a plan, implement, examine, and reflect. Throughout that process, we want to be consulting with our stakeholders, whether that's parents, your teachers, those different elements that should play a part of the process. And finally, we wanted to say that the move to evidence-based interventions and systemic improvement, again, this is not new for many of you. Many of you are already doing this, and it is the concepts of evidence-based interventions and systemic improvement are built into the core of many of the existing Kansas initiatives that are out there, whether that's the Kansas Education Systems Accreditation, the Kansas MTSS, Kansas STAR, et cetera. And so we're including resources here to those existing initiatives. If you have questions, you can certainly take a look at those. And then finally, some additional resources that are more specific to the strategies and evidence and best practices surrounding both evidence-based interventions and the systemic improvement process. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always refer them here to our team here at the Early Childhood and Special Education Title Services team, or anyone else here at the Kansas State Department of Education. This has just been an overview of evidence-based interventions and systemic improvement, but be assured that there will be some additional and more in-depth guidance and technical assistance made available throughout the year as we learn more about the implementation of ESSA and in particular in time for our next year's leadership conferences. Thank you.
Hello, Kansas. I am here this hot topic to talk to you about the second quarter rollout information for KISA. Alrighty, this particular presentation will go through the information that we put together for the second quarter, And if you paid attention to the first quarter rollout information, you will see that this is designed and set up in the exact same manner. So I won't spend a lot of time on the information that is the same outside of just to reference it. It continues on with our logic model that we used for the first quarter. So this is the table of contents. So if you're needing particular information, this is where you go to find it most quickly. Of course, the work that we're doing around our accreditation model all harkens back to the state board vision and outcomes, and all geared toward what helps create a successful Kansas high school graduate. As I already said, we are in the second quarter rollout, and so in this particular booklet, you have the second numbered column rather, highlighted, and this is the information that we are covering. As always, please do remember the design of these pages are uniform from time to time. So up in the upper right-hand corner, if you have any questions about whatever happens to be on the slide at that time, there's a direct contact name for you. And then also, along with the name up in the right-hand corner, if you have little links on the pages, it'll take you directly to different pieces of information. This particular one takes you to registering for the training that we're getting ready to come out and do. I think actually the first one took place last week, but we're hitting the well-worn path again this week, and we'll be going out for through November and into December. Once again, we are in the second quarter rollout. So this particular section, this next quarter's worth of information, will deal with what the different groups should be doing, might be looking at, specifically within the model and the process, the staggered implementation plan, process overview itself, and some details of the cycle. And then it just follows suit on down throughout the guidance booklet itself. So organizing state teams, rather than breaking all 4 teams out separately, this just says leadership teams, plural. So it means the district level and the building level. Please remember, keep in mind, depending on your individual situation in your system, it might make perfect sense to only have 1 leadership team. It might make perfect sense to have 2 leadership teams. Regardless, if this is the type of information to be discussed during the second quarter as we are preparing once again for KISA. If you'll recall, the assignment for this year is to learn the system. It's not really to put anything into play. Now, if you're ahead of the game and you want to keep on doing the work or following up on the work that you have been doing around school improvement, please keep right on going. It'll dovetail in nicely later on. But these are particular agenda items that you might want to use with your different leadership teams. And of course, these will appear multiple times throughout the booklet we have here in the information. As far as the other type of team that needs to be involved in this work are the site councils. And once again, this is plural, site councils, looking at the individual building site councils and leading up to the district site council, which is made up of a representation from the building site councils, or if you choose to do it this way, you can have just a whole separate group. It's fine. As you have questions, again, feel free, you can contact me. I'm Scott Meyers. Feel free to give me a call. Or Kelly Slayton's name is up here on the top. She would be the point person as you have questions with the site councils. So moving into the actual studying the model, the process overview. In the next few slides, we have graphic organizers that kind of show you, well, they do show you years 1 through 5. We'll be talking about this today and throughout Cycle 2 trainings as if a group is coming in the first year of the cycle, meaning it'll be 5 years before the system seeks their accreditation level. Keep in mind, though, it is fully embraced. If the individual system believes they're ready to come in and have their accreditation visit next year, great. We'd have to just kind of do a quick brief review to make sure that years 1 through 4 have been completed, and then you jump straight to year 5. So we are displaying this as if you're starting from scratch, but if you have been if you're halfway down the path right now, that's fine. Let's pick it up with your individual situation in the particular year that best fits you. you'll see as we go through these slides that each year is split into steps 1, 2, and 3, and it'll show the flow of the information and the work that's taking place. So things begin with the building leadership team, and they work with the building site council. This is talking about their needs assessments. They send the information on to the district leadership team, who looks at the information, reviews it, and also works with the district site council. And they work toward selecting an R, or the R's of area, the goal areas, the 2 R's for the cycle. And so the district leadership team will take all the good information from the buildings, make a decision, then make sure they talk with the district site council just to make sure they acknowledge it and provide some feedback. And so then they've said, okay, here are 2 areas. So the next step would be within year 1, they would talk with the outside validation team. If you'll recall, I did a session on the OVT, or the outside validation team, in preceding weeks. And so it's at this point that the system would work with the OVT and basically explain, here are the areas we chose and here's why. And so that information is then also shared with the local Board of Education. Now we're into year 2. And you'll see the same steps are taking place with the same players. It's just there's a little slight different piece of information going on, or activity taking place. So in step 1, they're taking the information, they've chosen the R's, the system has chosen the R's of concentration. And so now they're actually building goals that with action plans that will follow up and help in realizing the goal areas chosen by the district leadership team and acknowledged by the site councils and the board. So after those action plans have been created, the information is sent across to the district leadership team to make sure that they're all leading into the same goal, or make sure they're realizing, pulling in the same direction. And once again, a dialogue takes place with the OVT, particularly in year 2, the chair of the OVT. Also, of course, at this time, we're keeping the school board, local Board of Education, well informed of the activities taking place. Moving to year 3. The BLT, they're implementing their plans now. Now they're putting them into play, or they're following up with the plans that have been put into play. And the BLTs and the BSCs, they then turn in information to the DLT, and they say, here's what it looks like thus far. Here's what we're seeing. And the OVT does an on-site visit toward the end of the year to basically check the temperature and see if they can provide any help, and provide that outside objective view to make sure that all efforts are going the right way, and see if we have to make any course corrections, or just basically to keep things flowing. Moving us to year 4, which is basically a second year 3, if you will, because we're letting the plan grow. We have to let those seeds germinate, and now we're starting to see the impact of it, and very similar steps throughout year 4, steps 1, 2, and 3. Moving us to year 5, and year 5 is the accreditation year. So this is where the actual recommendation will ultimately get to the State Board of Education for a systems accreditation determination. So we go through some visits that take place, analyzing data, the OVT comes on site, they do a full-blown visit, on-site visit, the full team to say, okay, you started here, you ended up there, what do your results look like? And they're doing the deep dive work of making a recommendation then onto, after the local board sees their report, they're making a recommendation onto the group known as the Accreditation Review Committee, or known as the ARC. The Accreditation Review Committee is the group whose charge it is to make a formal recommendation to the State Board of Education for the accreditation rating. So that is the 5-year cycle in a nutshell. I went through it fairly quickly, so it might not be a bad idea for you to go back. You can back us up and where I started talking about this piece of information, or of course, give us a holler. We'll walk you through it with a few more details if you'd like. Or of course, you're welcome. Please come out to the regional events we will be hosting. One of the very common questions that we receive from people in the field is, when will the KSDE tell us in what year we're going to begin in the cycle? And our answer is always, we're not going to tell you where to begin. That is one of the beautiful pieces of this system. It has defined autonomy. You, as a school system, as an LEA, local educational agency, get to determine where you think it best, where you are in your process of growth through the years. And because it very well, we could have districts who believe they are ready for the accreditation visit next school year. And then we also have people who come in and saying, you know what, we want all 5 years. We're going to start at the very, very beginning. So the question is, how do we find that out? Well, see this little link down here at the bottom. Click here for the document showing all 5 years in one spot. These next few slides just kind of show you, breaks them into different years, and I'll come through them. But here's the recommendation. The idea is, how do you decide you're in year 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? And that is, here's what I would do. If I were in the field still, literally, I'd sit down and do this. I'd start right here, and I'd say, evaluating compliance and foundational structures. And I'd say, have we done that? Yep, we've done that. Number 2, the second column, rather, or row, establish an outside validation team. So have we done that? Yes, we have. Keep them going. And I would just keep going down this list. Now, the important part is that not only have we done the activity, but we've done it well. And so we have to make sure that, well, like the 4th one down, the BLT, gather and examine data supporting the results are. It's not good enough just to gather a bunch of data, but then we have to examine it and take a good hard look at it. So this is a nice roadmap of where you might determine your system is, but please make sure with the total caveat that it's the quality of the activity you're going through that matters, not that you just check that one off. It's not just a simple check sheet. So that's year 1. Here's year 2, and a variety of activities that take place, just a different way of looking at those graphic organizers I shared with you before. Years 3 and 4 rather, and year 5. So back on how I began this area of the compliance or the rollout materials, I would literally go through these sheets, making sure that we've done these, we've done them well, until I get down to a place where my system seems to, maybe say right about here, let's say, nope, we haven't really been doing those things. Then I would probably go ahead and look a little bit further, but then I'd back up and say, okay, it says here I should be in year 3. Then I would make a determination. I'd say, okay, according to this information, we should be in year 3. But you know what? I'm going to hedge my bet. I just want to be a little extra time, let it grow a little bit more. I'd probably back it up to year 2, personally. And as to where you'll make that final determination is, and this is where the relationship with the OVT matters so much, the outside validation team, because the OVT members will have been trained to come on site, and the system will say, we think we're in year 3, we're ready for year 3, but we really want to start in year 2. And the OVT will say, okay, well, tell us why. Let's just talk this through. And so through a good, thorough, deep dive conversation, a determination will be made. But once again, it's a local decision, not the KSDE. So once your system has chosen where you are and it fits, and you've talked with your OVT and it all makes sense that you're starting where you start, you'll come in either in groups 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Group 1 would be coming in next school year. 2017, 2018 would be the year the actual accreditation determination would take place. If it makes sense that you're coming in group 3, that means it'd be 1, 2, 3 school years before the accreditation determination would take place. I believe the majority of the systems in the state of Kansas come in group 5, which means there'll be 5 full years of work before the final accreditation visit. Now, once again, the beauty of the system is we can compress some of these years. It's fine if we want to compress years 1 through 3, or 2 and 3. I seriously recommend against trying to compress years 3 and 4 or 3 through 5. There's really no reason to do that, and actually it runs counter to the amount of time that it takes for the good works to start to bear fruit. So we got to let it grow. So this is what the implementation system looks like statewide, your individual system will be a member of one of these groups, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And the way to read this is, if you're in group 1, you're ready for accreditation visit next school year. If you think you're ready to be in group 5, your accreditation year is in the years 21, 22. All right, as far as introducing the rubrics, this is a repeat information from last quarter. It's important to get the people in your system looking at the different rubrics. It's not an assignment. You don't have to. You can wait till next year if you want to. But if you can start the game early, you're better off. And then how to actually go about finding out where you think you are is start at the end. Start in modeling and say, do we have all of this? If we don't have all this, all right, back it up to transitioning. Do we have all this? Let's say you do. Well, then you're probably transitioning. And so then you could, mark yourself as transitioning for that particular rubric. Of course, in order to really make sure that you are getting where you truly feel you are, it's important that the concept of inter-rater agreement is solidly agreed upon at home, that you have a nice shared definition of the different terms that come up. So like the word frequent, what does frequent mean? So a at-home definition needs to be developed, as per example. So different results, as you well know, results are a piece of the accreditation, important piece of the accreditation system. This particular quarter, we're looking at career and technical and career specific data points. Once again, you don't have to use this form. It's just here is a valuable tool for you to use if you'd like to, but it helps direct your thinking. So you give this a thought as to which data points you might want to use and ones that you might have at home that you might come up with on your own. Post-secondary success is also another data point we're going to work with throughout this particular quarter. And when we're coming out on site, we'll give a more in-depth discussion on these different areas. But this is the post-secondary success. As of, they've not fully adopted these measures yet as of October, but we are honing in on it. And this is what it looks like, is what is the student doing after high school graduation? What leading up to it and after, as far as the post-secondary success of the students of a given LEA. If you'll recall, there are foundational structures and compliance structures. The foundational structures are, as it says in the slide here, systemic plans, processes, or programs in place to support certain best practices and the ROSE capacities. And as we've said before, yes, ultimately we want all these in place. But right now, if there's just a plan in place to get there, that's more than sufficient. This particular quarter deals with written communication skills. It's a variety of ways that shows up. I'm not going to read the slide to you. In fact, rather than trying to catch it all right now, just pause it and you can pull it up. Or the ROSE capacities are available if you go follow the link on our website down here. ROSE capacities 2 and 3 deals with economic, social, and political systems and governmental processes. So right here in the election season, and the fact that your system has something in place or has information in place or machinations in place to address those different areas. As far as different compliance, in a real nutshell, it means all applicable state, federal, statutory, and regulatory requirements. This particular quarter, we are sharing with you nutrition and wellness, and by no means is this section meant to be exhaustive. There are just a ton of information. Any one of these slides is a whole class into itself. Heck, it's a major into itself. So use this as a guide to reach out to individuals to get more information as far as, on this particular slide, nutrition and wellness. This particular slide, it deals with early childhood. So as you have you look at these individual bullets and your questions come up, the person to contact is Barbara Dale. And so to get a deeper dive of information. Special education, obviously, once again, it's a career unto itself. So there's no way we could capture it all on this on these rollout meetings. So here are a variety of pieces of information that go into the special education within our state and federally. So feel free to reach out to people to get more information about that. This particular one has to deal with emergency safety interventions. and there's links to take you to more information. And likewise with title services, and these are all individual programs that take place within title services. So just be aware of these at this stage, and then reach out to this Assistant Director, Doug Boline, for deeper information if you need it. Chances are you're already all over this, but it's a good idea to reach out to verify that you're doing everything as it should be done. So that's it. That is the third quarter. This Hot Topics events, these are meant to be a broad overview. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to contact any of the people on this screen or any of the screens previous, and we'll be coming out across the state. If you'll remember way back at the beginning of this, there's a spot to register for the different events. If I can find it real fast, I will. And we'd love to see you. There you go, right here. It's in slide 5. Google Doc for registering for training. You go to this slide here and you'll be able to sign up for the area, or the areas if you want to see it more than once, to attend when we come out into the field. So with that, I'm signing off. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to give me a call. Thank you.